Hey guys, this is Tyler with noobgrammar.com. Noobgrammar.com is an ASP.NET blog I started. If you want to go check it out, I'd really appreciate it. Let's get started with this video. So this video is going to be a continuation of the RSS Aggregator series. I had originally said that it was going to be uh, about 3 parts, but I got to looking at some of the code, and there's a lot to cover. So instead of trying to squeeze it all into, like a 2-hour video, I'm going to kind of break it apart. Maybe I'll call them 2.1 and 2.2 or something like that. So without any further ado, let's get started. So we're going to set up the actual GUI for the aggregator in this one. There's not going to be any code, so sorry guys, that'll be later on. I'm not going to spend a ton of time explaining all of the steps that I'm going through in terms of adding the controls and such to the forms, but I do have another video about building a calculator that goes into a whole lot more detail about that. So if you're new to Visual Studio, you might want to go check that one out before you get started with this one. So picking up where we left off, make sure we have the XML parser solution open in Visual Studio. Let's go ahead and rename the solution to aggregator so that it makes a little more sense. So just click on the solution and then wait a few seconds and click again. It's kind of like renaming a file in Windows. Aggregator, and hit enter. And now our solution has changed. Now we need to add a Windows Forms project to our solution. So right click on the solution name, go to add, go to new project, Windows Forms app.NET Framework. Make sure you've got your location, and then we're going to name this aggregator app or something. All right. Let Visual Studio do its thing. Now before we do anything else, let's go ahead and set the default project for our solution to this Windows Forms project that we just created. So go to project. I'm sorry. Make sure you have the solution highlighted. Then go to project, properties, startup project. Make sure you're on that option, and choose aggregator app. The next thing we're going to do is more of a style preference. You don't have to do this, but personally I don't like the traditional old school look and style of the Windows Forms. So we're going to install something called Metro UI, or Metro Modern UI in this case. So the way we do that is go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, Manage NuGet Packages. Go to Browse, type in Metro Modern UI. Okay, click it, and we want to install it into the aggregator app. So go ahead and check that one and hit install. Okay. Now we have the UI, Metro Modern UI installed into our package. We'll go ahead and close out of that. And we also need to add some controls to our toolbox. So go ahead and open your toolbox. Right click in the blank space here, and let's add a tab. Metro UI. Right click on that tab, go to choose items. When that loads, click browse. And what we're looking for is the DLL file that comes with the Metro Modern package. So browse to the root directory of your solution, RSS Aggregator, go to packages, go all the way down till you get to these DLLs, and click the Metro Framework.dll. Click open, click OK. And now we have a bunch of Metro controls here. I think we're finally ready to actually get started now. So let's go ahead and change the name of our form to AgForm. Okay. let it do its thing. And then we actually do need to go into the code just a little bit. So right click, go to view code. And what we're going to do, right now our ag form is extending the system windows.forms form class. We need to change that so that we are extending the metro form class. So just type in metro form. And we got a squiggly. We fix that. Save it. And now our form looks quite a bit better. You can play with the color scheme if you want, so just make sure you have the form selected. Over in your properties window, go down to Metro Appearance. You can change the theme. Let's change it to dark. And it doesn't update immediately. If you go out of it and then go back into it, it'll change it. So let's change one more thing. And then the style. Let's do the red. Yeah, there's red. Okay, let's see what that looks like. So we'll go out, go back in. I like that. And there's some other tags in here you can kind of play around with. Just kind of see what they do, see what you like. I don't think there's any other things we need to change. Oh, I did forget. At this time, let's go ahead and set the icon of our form. So if we do Control plus F5 right now, where'd it go? Okay, this is what we get. But you see this weird little icon here? This is the default Visual Studio icon, and you can set it. It's pretty easy, but you do have to create your own icon. I mean, I guess you could pull one off the internet, but let's talk about being legal here. So I'm not going to go into detail about how to make a .ico file. You can use GIMP to do it, but that's about all I'm going to say. So I've got an icon file that I've put into my project folder. So let's go down here to the icon, click it, browse. Okay, and I just created an images folder and drag it in there. Okay, so let's test it again. Control plus F5. And now we have this new icon that looks a lot better. So let's resize our form and start adding to some controls. The first thing we're going to add is a Metro tab control. Now, a Metro tab control essentially allows us to have a tabbed window, kind of like an internet browser, that we can use to display different things on each tab and so forth. So Toolbox, under Metro UI, go to Metro tab control, just drag it on there. Then I have to resize it. Okay. Then we need to add some tabs. So click on this arrow, go to Add Tab, and let's go ahead and add 2 tabs because we need 2 of them. Now we need to change a few things. Let's start by changing this Form 1 text. Make sure you have the form selected. Over in your Properties window, go to Text, or the text property rather. Let's change it to Newsfeed. And for some reason, my Visual Studio isn't automatically updating things, but yours should. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but if I just go out of it and go back into it, it changes it. Okay, and then let's change the text that's displayed for our tabs. So go ahead and select the tab control. Over here on the properties window, go down to tab pages. Open that. Okay. Under text, let's call this one news. And then on the second one, let's change that one to, I believe it's should be feeds. Let me look and see. Yes, Feats. Okay. Okay. And you can change the appearance of pretty much any Metro component the same way we changed the appearance of our main form. Uh, I'm not going to do that for these because I actually kind of like the way that looks. But just keep that in mind if you want to change some things. If you don't like this style, or if you like different colors, just do whatever you need to do there. And I do want to make a note that if you choose not to use the Metro form, the Metro UI form, all of these controls that I'm using, you should be able to find equivalent regular Windows form controls in the toolbox. Let's see, toolbox, all Windows forms. See, there's another tab control, and it looks different, kind of old school. But again, it's personal preference, whatever you want to do. So there's a couple of things we need to add into this first tab here. Let me pull up the semi-finished product so you can see what I'm talking about. So what we've got here is this is called a Metro panel, and we have our tiles here that represent our feeds. And then we have a web browser control that actually displays our information. And then we have a button to update the news. Okay. And a quick note about why we're using the web browser control. If you look at a lot of the feeds, they're the XML tag that contains all of the information, like all of this stuff, is already written in HTML. So to me, it makes a lot more sense to just use a web browser control and modify some of the styles rather than trying to parse out all that information and trying to do something crazy with it. So that's why we're using web browser control. Okay. So toolbox, go down to your Metro components and then Metro panel. And let's drag it all the way over. And then our web browser. So the web browser is actually located under, well, you can get to it through all Windows forms, but it's basically just a regular Windows Forms component. There's not a Metro version, so let's click and drag that over. And then we need our Metro button. Metro button. And we'll just drag it all the way across too. Okay, so let's start our renaming. So click on the panel. And I'm going to change this to the alphabetical sorting. We're going to call this one en slash or dat underscore. We'll call it tiles. Then for a web browser, I don't know, display. And then for our button, we're going to call it button update news. Then we also have to change the text that's appearing on this one. So go down to text, update news. So let's go ahead and test it. And we can switch back and forth between our tabs. And when we do, you can see the update news button goes away. Now the Metro panel and the web browser are there. We just can't see them right now because they don't have any content. And I can prove that by adding a border here. Border style. Go to, I don't know, fix 3D. Let's just kind of see what it looks like. Okay. I mean, you can leave that. I may leave that just to kind of see what it looks like. We do have another problem though. If we were to resize this, nothing changes. And we have a big empty space all around it. So to fix that, there's a few things we need to do. Make sure you have the tab control selected. And for this one, we're going to use the dock property. Change this to the middle button here, which is going to be fill. So let's test it. Now our tab control grows. Then for our panel, we're going to use dock, and we're going to use the top. Then for our web browser, we're not going to use dock for this one. We're actually going to use anchor, and it should be set on all 4 of them. So top, right, bottom, left, and you can just click on them to unset them. And then for our update news feed, or update news button, look at what the settings are supposed to be. Okay, that's what I thought. So that one we're going to use dock, and we're going to set that one to bottom. Now if we test it, everything grows. And there's actually one other control I forgot to add, and that's going to be a control that tells us what the current date is. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the completed project again. We need a label for this line right here. So the way we're going to do that is, let's make some room for it. Shrink the web browser just a little bit. So add a Metro label. Okay, I guess we can't resize it. So let's change the name of this. So LB, what did I call it? Let's just call it the last updated at. And we can change the text that's in it. So let's just put now the text here doesn't really matter because we're going to be changing it with code, but this makes it a little bit easier to deal with if we have some text there. One of the things I've ran into in the past is if you don't have any text in these labels, they're really hard to select again because there's nothing for you to grab onto if there's no text in it. So our first tab is done, and now it's time to get into the more complicated tab. So let's click on the Feats tab, and let me pull up the completed project. These are all the things we're going to have to add to it. We have some labels, some text boxes, some buttons, and then a list box control. That's pretty much it. But as you can see, it's a whole lot more complicated than the news tab. Yep. So let's add a few things. So toolbox, Metro label, wherever it's at. Then we need our Metro text box. Then we need another label, which actually I'm just going to copy and paste these two. Then we need a list box. And this one's not going to be a Metro control. This is just regular form control. List box. Then we need two more. Well, we need two more sets of these, so just copy and paste them again. Then we need two buttons. Metro buttons, I should say. And I actually forgot a button, so let's move everything down. And put that button up here. Now I'm going to go through and format all of this and lay it out. Some of it's going to use some of those anchor and dock techniques. Um, Actually, pretty much all of it is. That way we get all of our shrinking and growing working correctly with the resize of the window. And that should be all we have to do. I'm also going to do all the renaming and stuff. There is one thing I want to mention though. On the Metro text boxes, if we scoot this out here, the default text is actually, well, we have the text here, so we could make some changes here. So placeholder, we can do that. But if we test it, we have a problem here because this text is automatically inserted into the label, but whenever we click on it, we have to go back and delete everything and then type what we need to. So it's not very user friendly. So the way you get around that is change the watermark. And let's call that, let's see, this is going to be the easy name for a new feed. Okay, now let's test it. Ah, crap. Hold on. There we go. So now we have this watermark here, and if we start typing, it all goes away and we don't have to actually erase it. So it's much better that way for the user. Okay, so now I'm going to get to arranging all this, and I'll fast forward through it so you don't have to sit there and watch me do all this mess. So I'm going to stop real quick and mention that the way we're going to align these uh, for the shrinking and growing is actually going to be just using the anchor, and we're going to use top, left, and right. And I don't think I explained what anchor does earlier, and that's my bad. But anchor basically says that whatever coordinate you start out with on each of these sides, keep that in proportion to the rest of the app. So with top, left, and right selected, that means it's going to keep the same coordinate relatively as the top, left, and right edges that we have set. So if we move this over and then test it, as you can see, it grows. So I just wanted to stop and make that clear uh, because I don't think we had to do that with the previous anchor. So back to fast forward. Okay, now that we've got everything all prettied up and looking good, let's make sure everything's working correctly. Okay, we're scaling properly. We can switch back and forth on our tabs. We have our prompts here that go away. Okay, so we do have one issue that stems from where I forgot to add the add feed button, the add new feed button. If we try to tab through, so hit the tab key. Okay, this one is focused on first, then this one. Then we skip the add feed button. Then we go to our list box control. Do tab again. Correct, 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 correct. And then we finally get to our add new feed button. Okay, so why does this matter? Well, it's good UX UI design. It's a good practice to make your tab button behave correctly in the application. If the user can't use a mouse for some reason, or I mean, if you're like me, a lot of times, especially when filling out a form or something like that, I I just hit tab because it's easier than taking my fingers off the keyboard to go to the mouse and come back. So we need to fix that to make this the best that it can be. So the way we do that is there's a property on all of these controls that is called tab index. So as you can see, this one is tab index 3, tab index 4, and it skips these since they're, these labels, they do have tab indexes, but it skips them because the user can't actually interact with them. So this text box the user can interact with, so we need to see what that one is. That's 5. Then our add new feed button, it's tab index 13. Well, we need to change that to 6. Of course, then our list box is also tab index 6, so we got to change that too. Let's change this one. I know it doesn't matter because the user can't interact with it, but it's just good practice to make sure that none of your items have duplicate tab indexes. So what were we on? 9. Okay, this one's going to be 10. This one's going to be 11. So on and so forth. Okay. Tab. There we go. That's looking better. All right, that's about it for this one, guys. I'm sorry we didn't really get into any code on this one. The video is already about 30 minutes long, and all we've done is build the UI. So I hope you can understand why I'm kind of trying to break it up a little bit, because there's a lot to digest in it, and the code, there's going to be a lot of code that we have to do as well. So as always, there will be a blog post that corresponds to this tutorial on noobgrammar.com. All of the code that we've done, or in this case not code, all of the form work that we've done will be available on GitHub, and there will be a link to that in the description. And all right, if you guys want to check out noobgrammar.com and let me know what you think, I'd appreciate it. Thanks, guys.